Hello, Zainab. How are you today?
Hi, good morning. It's nice to talk to you again. I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm fine too. In this crazy world, we just have to be there. So let's see what we can do to make it better or less worse. So today I'm reaching out to you to talk about your work, your amazing work, and I'm talking on behalf of Bi Plus Equal project and association, which you're also a member of. Can you please start with introducing yourself for us and for everyone who's seeing us and hearing us?
I'm Zeynab Peyghambarzadeh, and I have been a senior researcher in Bi Plus Equal. But prior to that, I have been working on bi issues, specifically by asylum issues, for several years. We co-founded a Spectrum together in 2014, and as part of that, we also established the first website on bisexuality in Persian, Dojenskera. And while working in Dojenskera, I gradually started working on by asylum issues, and then I did my PhD on that, which was the first empirical study on by asylum in any country. And then, of course, I worked on by people of color as well as part of that.
Among all these subjects, why asylum seekers?
Well, in the same way that I started working on bisexuality and also before that on feminism because of my own personal experiences, uh, by asylum also came naturally as part of my lived experience and also as part of my connection to the community. I have been privileged myself as an Iranian LGBT person that I didn't have to go through the asylum process. But when we invited people to share their experiences about bisexuality in the Farsi speaking community, we realized that a lot of people only talk about sexuality, more specifically sexual orientation, in the context of asylum, because that's a context that forced them to come out, that forced them to talk about their sexuality. But at the same time, it's a context that is very binary and not very bi inclusive. So, because asylum process make it hard to talk about bisexuality, it is not easy for Iranian to talk about bisexuality. And then I realized that there is this general research gap, which also make it harder for activists to work on it because there is not that much data. And yeah, like then I thought that this is something that we need to do as by plus activists from Iran.
Mm, yeah, great. So you mentioned a gap, like this is the word that you use. Is there a gap, or is this just not enough attention paid to non-monosexual asylum seekers? How's the data looking like?
Well, there has been some studies that focus on asylum cases from a legal point of view, and they raise this question of why we don't see by asylum seekers in the data where they are. Do they actually really seek asylum, or they just don't talk about their bisexuality? And those studies mostly were in English speaking countries, as usual. They suggest that by asylum seekers have been advised not to talk about their bisexuality by lawyers, by activists, by other asylum seekers. And it is not always because these people don't like to include bisexuals, but sometimes it's because they want to protect them from the perceived biphobia in the asylum process. And during the past few years, a lot of guidelines have been changed to make the asylum process more by inclusive. So we can see that a lot of international guidelines, like UNHCR guideline, as well as national guidelines in countries that accept asylum seekers based on their sexual orientation, which is usually um, from global north, they have specifically mentioned bisexuality in the asylum process, and they have advised case officers to be aware of it, to not discriminate people because of their sexual orientation. They specifically define what is biphobia and how to avoid it, but still there is this general fear in among all the stakeholders who are involved in the asylum process that even if on paper asylum process is supposed to be by inclusive, in practice it is not. So we can see that there are very clear advices from those stakeholders to hide bisexuality in that asylum process, but also a lot of biphobic culture in the asylum process because we live in a heteronormative society which is very binary, but more specifically LGBT communities are very homonormative and binary again. So from the beginning, while people are learning about their sexual orientation, they learn to not to talk about bisexuality, to be accepted in the community, to be queer enough, to feel better about themselves. They learn that those stories that are more essentialist and binary are more acceptable. And also because there is this limited resources in the asylum process, people compete over those limited resources, and they assume that some people deserve less than others to have access to them, and also they think that they can decide who has the priority. They think that gay and lesbian should be prioritized in the asylum process. And through all of these formal and informal information that by asylum seekers receive from the community and different people who are involved in the asylum process, they learn to remain silent to protect themselves and to literally survive in an asylum process like Turkey, which is a transitory country, and asylum seekers don't have access to housing, to food, to financial support in the same way that asylum seekers are qualified for them automatically in European countries or North American countries. So the more asylum process is hostile, the more asylum seekers uh, become hostile to each other as well. And this is the reason that, yeah, like for asylum seekers, it become even harder than us to talk about bisexuality.
Right. Oh, wow. And how do you see the community involvement in improving the situation, both the bi plus community or the LGBTQIA plus community? Let's pick Turkey, for instance. What is done in Turkey and what is not done, and why is it not done? Can you just clarify a little bit why we're so behind in the bi plus equality when it comes to asylum seeking process? I mean, in comparison to gay, lesbians, trans people, and I'm not even going to talk about the intersex community because I know that intersex community has been advanced, but it's still not there as one of the asylum seeking cases that is discriminated around against.
And so maybe I should specifically mention why I'm talking about Turkey, because most of the asylum seekers who seek asylum in Turkey based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, more than 80% of them has been always Iranian asylum seekers. Iran is a neighbor of Turkey, and also this Iranian community is very visible compared with other asylum seekers like LGBT Syrian asylum seekers or Iraqi and Afghans. They are not as visible and as out as Iranian LGBT asylum seekers. So there has been a lot of studies done about them, because it's the safest way of accessing to Iranian LGBTQ community. And also these are people who are very much ready to talk about their sexual orientation, because they assume that they can uh, help their asylum process through sharing their stories with researchers, with journalists, with documentary makers. But in all of these studies and content, bi people were not that much visible. And the reason that there was not so many studies about bi asylum seekers in general was that they were not feeling safe to talk about their sexual orientation. But through the work that we did together about bisexuality in the Farsi speaking process, we could build this trust. And as a result, I could access this community and listen to their stories. And it was also at the same time that the bi movement was growing in Turkey, um, similar to many other countries. But also it happens at the same time that LGBT movement has been under a lot of pressure in Turkey. There are still a lot of LGBT organizations who are legal and can work in Turkey, but there has been pressure on organizing pride and more public events. And it was in that context in 2019 that I went to Turkey, and I collected data, and I talked to my research participants. And also it was in a time that the time that asylum seekers had to wait in Turkey as a transitory country has increased a lot because of the changes in asylum policies in uh, North American countries. It was during the Trump time, and also there were a lot of Syrian asylum seekers. So we have this complicated international context. And then we have different activists who are trying to support asylum seekers in different ways. Both activists who are involved in the LGBT movement, and also activists who are involved in the refugee support movement. And there has been this desire to make bisexuality more visible in Turkey, but also, yeah, it has been a very hostile environment. And we can see that since then there has been other studies about by asylum seekers. I'm aware of two of them in here in UK, and also in France. So the community is trying to learn about this issue. The community is trying to take actions, but the resources are very limited in by movement in general. And also the movement is not that much diverse, unfortunately. So people don't have access to resources, they don't have access to knowledge, and uh, they don't know how to make the movement more inclusive for people of color and more specifically for by asylum seekers.
We yet again come to this reality of bi plus movement being under-resourced in all ways, like money, people who can dedicate their lives to and their activism to, and also the bigger LGBTQIA plus organizations or groups being not that bi plus inclusive that we really desire. So for the listeners and those people who are watching this very short conversation, do you have any ideas or any proposed lecture so people can read more, or is there any community they can just check in and see like if they can bring anything, if they can learn anything and share anything? Specifically on asylum, bi plus asylum taking, of course.
Yeah, so like at the same time that I was doing this research as an academic research, I was also trying to invite by asylum seekers to get more involved in this process. But it has been also a movement that started before I started working on this issue. So there was this campaign to support a by asylum seeker in the UK, Horatia Edwards. And it was a successful campaign which helped him to stay in the UK. But also, I think we need to more specifically get involved in the LGBT asylum support organizations because through that we can get access to by asylum seekers. We can help the activists and also other asylum seekers who are involved in the process to become more by inclusive. We can create a safe space for by asylum seekers to come out, and also we can invite them to join the by movement. So this has been one of the issues that we discussed in different workshops that I organized around this issue. One of them was part of the Bi Plus Equal project. And we shared our experiences, our concern, and we discuss how we can get access to these LGBT support organizations in different countries, how we can uh, provide content that are specifically about that context in a language that is understandable for by asylum seekers. And I have published different content, both academic and activist content that people can access, and also they are always welcome to contact me if they are interested to discuss it together and work on it together.
Great. So they can contact Dr. Zeynab Peyghambarzadeh, Zeynab at feministspectrum.org or Zeynab at biplusequal.org. Both of them are available for you. And I guess we can also find some things on social media here and there. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you think it's worth to be mentioned before we say goodbye this time?
I think it's also important to talk about by plus people of color in a more general term. Because yeah, maybe by asylum seekers have the most complicated situation, but there are also by plus people of color, both immigrants and people who have lived in global north for several generations, and they have their own specific issues, and there are different studies that shows that they don't feel welcome in the bi movement. They don't feel belonged to this movement, and they rather join groups that are specifically for LGBT people of color in a state of bi plus groups and events. And this was the topic of a workshop that I organized in the Bi Plus conference. It was a hybrid conference, and we discussed how different variables impact on these issues. We talked about the budget and where activities are organized, and how they are advertised, and the structure of bi plus groups in general. And we discuss how we can make it more inclusive of by people of color, how we can create a space that they feel safe and welcome, and they can join the events, and they can also take responsibility in the groups. They can become a more visible part of bi plus movement, and I think that can also help to create that safety for bi plus asylum seekers, because representation is very important, and it impacts on the way that people can feel belonged and safe in a context.
Yeah. Absolutely. This whole idea of belonging and feeling safety and being safe in our own bodies, but also in the community, it all comes down to that. Thank you very much for this conversation. We hope we can have more of these kind of conversations, and we will catch up on this conversation on social media. Thank you so much, Zainab.
Thank you.